We should have our notes labeled, section 2.1, multiplying integers. Is everybody's notes labeled? Remember, you label your notes so when it comes time for the notebook check, the person grading your notebook can see where your notes are so they don't mark off. You lose 2 points for every set of notes you don't have. Ooh, that's not good. Okay, so like I said, we're in multiplying integers today. The first thing you need to know actually are your rules for multiplying integers. Does anybody remember the rule from last year that you learned? Do you remember your rule for multiplying and dividing? Anybody remember?
Oh, yeah.
Your even odd rule? Okay, so here's your even odd rule. If you have an even number of negatives in your expression, then your answer is positive. If there's an odd number of negatives in the expression, you have a negative answer, okay? Usually it's going to be 1 or 2, okay? So if you're multiplying 1 negative, your answer is negative. If you're multiplying 2 negatives, your answer is positive. But that also applies if there's more than 2 numbers being multiplied, okay? So we call it our even odd rule. Do not get it confused with addition and subtraction. This is a different set of rules for multiplication and division. Okay, so using those rules, let's look at example 1 now. In example 1, thank you, we are multiplying integers, okay? And these numbers are not going to be overly difficult to multiply in and of themselves. Usually it's going to be on your spectrum of your times tables between 1 and 12. I'm not testing you on your multiplication tables. You need to know them, obviously, but we're kind of assuming we're past that point. I'm really testing you on, can you get the sign of your answer correct? Okay, so on number 1, negative 5 times negative 6. Well, we multiply 5 times 6, which equals 30. Is my answer positive or negative?
Positive.
It is positive because there are 2 negatives, and that's an even number of negatives. 30. What about 3 times negative 4? What would it be? Just tell me.
Negative 12.
Negative 12. Why is my answer negative?
Because
there's only 1 negative. What about number 3?
25. What? Oh, sorry. 0. Negative 20. 0.
Is it 0 or negative 0?
0.
It's 0. There's no such thing as negative 0. So sadly, if you write negative 0 on your quiz, that would be incorrect. Okay, so just 0, it does not have positive or negative, actually. All right, go ahead and solve 4, 5, and 6 and check with your neighbor on your answers after you've solved it by yourself. Okay, everyone together, 4 times negative 6. Negative 24. 5 times 5. 25. Negative 1 times negative 9. Positive 9. Okay, who got them all? All right, very good. Example 2 now deals with evaluating expressions. There's a couple key factors here that we need to point out. The first thing I need you to do is write down numbers 1 and 2. Don't try to solve them, just write them down. Leave a little bit of space in between. Go ahead and write down numbers 1 and 2. Do you notice that's different between numbers 1 and 2? One has parentheses, the other one doesn't. What's very important for you to realize is when there's parentheses, it means that it is that exact number repeated. Okay? So because there's parentheses on number 1, that means negative 2 times negative 2. Remember, exponent just tells me how many times I'm multiplying the base by itself. So that equals positive 4. When the base is not in parentheses and it's a negative, this is going to help you on your classwork if you can remember this. It means you do take the first number, but then the second number that you multiply it by does not have the negative. So your answer will be different. Okay? This is especially important when you're giving your calculator commands. If you're raising a negative number to a power, you need to make sure that you either put it in parentheses or you don't, because that affects the sign of your answer. Okay? Do you understand what I just did there? Okay? The only time the negative repeats is true repeated multiplication as if it was in parentheses. Okay? All right, now let's look at number 3. We see here numbers 3 and 4, and in some of your classwork, order of operations. Order of operations. So we need to make sure that we're following order of operations when we're solving. We also need to look at some possible ways that we could use commutative property to help us solve. Okay, so on number 3, I want you to look at this expression and see, is there a way I could rearrange these to make it easier to solve? Is there a way I could rearrange them? Gabe, what do you think?
Yes, because, and I had a question about everything, because -2, if you times -2 with -5,
Yes.
positive 10.
Yes.
10 times 17.
Very good. And that's a lot easier to do mental math, wouldn't you agree? To do -2 times -5 times 17. Now this is positive 10 times 17, and we know when we're multiplying a number by powers of 10, however many zeros were in that number, we just add to the end of the number that's being multiplied. So it's 170. That was a lot easier. And guys, since you don't have calculators, okay, that could really be beneficial to you on your math test. I could very well give you a quote-unquote complicated expression to solve, but if you recognize commutative property, it's going to be a piece of cake. All right? So commutative property can really give you some nice shortcuts. All right, so now what do you think you're going to do first in number 4? What do you do, guys? Just tell me. What do you do? Some of you guys, yes, all right. Some of y'all are falling asleep on me. Yes, -3 plus 4. Not really falling asleep. You just are kind of zoning out. All right, so -6. What's -3 plus 4? 1. What's -6 times 1? -6. Okay, another thing. Okay, I'm going to caution you against using all mental math on these expressions. You might think, oh, you know, that's easy. -3 plus 4 is 1 times -6 is -6. I don't need to write it out. I'm not going to count off for that. You're not using your calculator, so I know that you have to use your brain to get to your answer. However, the more steps you have, the more you open yourself up to making mistakes. Okay, so I would encourage you just to write every step. All right, and that's kind of just my advice to you on example 2. Any questions? The next example, however, isn't necessarily one that I would put as a test or quiz question. I really like it for kind of maybe a bonus type of question. We had fun with it last hour, so I'm excited to see what answers you guys come up with. It's called Modeling Real Life. I kind of viewed it more like a riddle, so that's why I put riddle. Solve a number puzzle on your phone. You start with 250 points. You finish the puzzle in 8 minutes and 45 seconds and make 3 mistakes. Each mistake is minus 50 points, and each second under 10 minutes gives you 1 point bonus. That's a 1. What is your final score? You are going to need some type of work shown, okay, in order to know. You're not saying anything out loud. Hey, whoa, whoa, whoa. You're working completely independently on your papers, okay? You need work. If all you have is an answer, you're not going to get the full credit, okay? So let's take a few minutes to solve this. I start with 250 points. I lose, okay, 50 points per question I missed. So that's why there's a subtraction sign there. And then I also gained how many bonus points? 75, because I finished 1 minute and 15 seconds ahead of time. That's 75 seconds, okay? So 250 minus 150 plus 75 is 175. Okay? All right, if you understand that, that's everything you need to know for section 2.1.